Bum 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 bum.
Tomatoes?
Hello, and welcome to the video for how do I create a new project template. So what is a new project template? Well, when you launch the engine, you get the project browser. You have the option for new projects. Inside of here are the templates. Your C++ and our blueprint templates. If you go through these, I've added my own. I've added one called a default Android template, gives some information, and this little picture. And if I create a brand new template with this, so we're going to create my project 2, for example, and load it up, we're going to find a project set up how I want it with my settings and my content all ready to go. Like you can look through here, you can see we've got it set for ES 3.1 for the preview. If we went to our project settings and we looked at our supported platforms, you'll see I only have Android set up. Under rendering, for example, I've automatically disabled things like bloom, auto exposure, and motion blur because I don't want it. Mobile HDR is disabled. The content, it's my default starter map, how I want it set up, with the settings in here, and I've removed anything I don't want. So this is a brand new template I created to do what I want with. So how would we do this? Well, the first thing you want to do is you want an actual project to convert over to a template. In this case, if I pull up this folder, we have a folder here called Default Android Template. Now all this is a brand new project, removed of all the things I don't want, changed the settings for what I do want, and added in everything else I do want. So if we were to go to your library, for example, started up a new engine version, templates are specific to the engine and installed in the engine directory, so this part's important. Create a new project, blank, or however you want for your basis. In this case, I could do a third person. I'm going to name it new template. I don't want anything special in here. We're going to aim this for whatever we want. Hit create project. It's going to go ahead and create it, and you'll get a default template that you've chosen and a default project set up with your settings. Now go ahead and adjust it however you want. We're going to make this quick and simple just to show you. So for example, this thing's annoying. I don't need that anymore. I'm just going to make a new level. I want to start off blank because it's going to be a 2D project or something. So I don't need the default map anymore. I'm going to put my default map in its new folder. So we'll make a new folder called maps. We'll save it out. We'll call this our default map. Of course, we want to make sure we go into our project settings, set up our default map to that new mode. So we'll do that. These are, of course, all optional. You do whatever you want. Maybe you just simply want a default template with some extra stuff in it, like some plugins or default things enabled, or VR plugins disabled to start off with a new third person. Whatever you'd like. Now that I've got this set up with the basics, I've got the content how I want it. I've got some things showing how I want it. My project settings are set how I want it. There's a few important things you have to make sure you do. Well, you don't have to, but you should do them. Go into your description and your project settings and give it a unique project name and project ID. In this case, I'm going to call it a new blank template because that's what I want to call it. And I'm just going to go ahead and generate a new project ID once or twice. It's to make sure we don't have collisions, to make sure this is unique when we put it into our templates folder. You don't need to change your icon. That is actually done separately. Now that these things are done, let's go ahead and close that out. We're going to go ahead and we will close out this project. And our project is now done. If we go into our folder where I had the project, so UE4, I called that one my new template. Here's all my files for my new template. And of course, if we go into our library, we can see we have our project ready to go right here, new template. Now we need to convert this over to the files we need for our template. The only things you need are going to be your U project, the content folder, and the config folder. Those are the only things that are really required, and that's for a blueprint project. If you have a C++ project, you're going to want your source folder as well. You don't have to have your solution file. You don't want build folders, intermediate folders, saved folders. Those are things that are all optional. You don't want them. Now we can clean this project up right here and move it over, or we can leave them as is and ignore the files. And I'll show you both of those ways. I would prefer to clean it. Now I'm going to get rid of my intermediate, but my saved folder I might want to keep. When these templates are created, it's basically going to copy all the files from the template folder over into your project folder. You may want some things that are specific in your saved config, Windows for example. Like my per project user settings are things like the way my layout is set up. Maybe my default material level, like on the other project you saw Android. So if there's anything specific to your project, they're going to be in the per project user settings here. You may want to keep that. If you do, just get rid of the stuff you don't want. For example, we're going to keep it. I'm going to delete everything out of there except what I want. I want to keep my Windows folder in my saved config. I'm going to keep my content folder with all my content. And I'm going to keep my config folder with all my configuration. Now you could go ahead and, for example, in content, also get rid of things like collections and developers. It'll remake those. But if you have any collections already set up, it might be best to keep them. So now that I have my basics here, what do we do with it? We're going to copy those files, and we're going to go put them in our template folder. So this is for Unreal Engine 4.22. In my Epic Games folder, I have my engines. I'm going to go into 4.22, templates, and then I want to paste this into the appropriate folder. Now this folder should be named whatever your project's named. So for example, if I was smarter, I would have gone back one, grabbed my new template folder, and then pasted it into here. Now we have a new template folder. You can also see we have all the other templates that come with the engine, and then my default Android template up top. Once we have our template in here, we're going to need two things. A media folder holding our images, and a configuration file to hold the items that you see when it starts up. The easiest thing to do is grab something from something that is as close as possible. In this case, I started up with a third-person blueprint template. So I'm going to go in here. Under config, I want the template defs file. So we'll copy that, and we will go ahead and slap that into my new template under config. And then we're also going to want the, I keep going back too far, an image. So we want our media folder. So I'm going to copy the whole media folder, and I'm going to go ahead and put this into my new template under media. Now we have the required files. At this point, if we wanted to, we could start the engine and it would work, but it's going to be a duplicate of the existing third-person blueprint, and it's going to look confusing. So first thing under config, template defs, these are all the definitions for what's going to show up when we create a new template. A lot of these things are optional, and if you don't have them in here, it's simply going to ignore them. A good example is localized descriptions. Right now, these are the default localized descriptions. You can see we have 4 languages in here. Well, there's more languages than that. It's just not localized. And if you don't use them, or you're not going to use them, or you don't have the proper translation, you can delete it. So in this case, I'm only going to display one piece of information in English. In this case, I want this to be called my new template. Here's my description, where it shows the localized description. I'm just going to change this to my new template. Obviously, fill it out however you'd like, especially if you're going to give it to someone else. Class types and asset types. This is what shows up under the description and the picture. It's generally something Epic included to show what you're going to be using and learning from this template. Completely optional. It'll show none. Actually, it'll show nothing if you completely delete these. So I'll just show you how that works. We'll delete those. Folders to ignore, again, optional. Files to ignore, optional. These are folders and files inside of your structure that will be ignored. So remember before I said you could copy the whole project, including things like your binaries, intermediate, and saved folders. This will ignore those when it copies it over. In our case, inside of our template, we have a saved folder that I want to copy over. So I'm going to erase this line because I want the saved folder copied over. We don't want the media copied over, of course, because it's got the pictures just for the template. And we can, of course, ignore these. Folders to rename. File name replacements, replacement of files. These are all optional things. I'd recommend leaving them. It just basically renames things to make sure uppercase and lowercase are correct because there's context sensitivity sometimes when you're using source files. Delete them, leave them. These are just actions that will happen during the copy process. These next ones are important. Shared content packs. So in order to save space, there are certain things that are shared throughout the content packs. One of them being, for example, the default mannequin. It's in more than one content pack. Rather than having those files duplicated, it's simply under the shared context folder. So if we actually go back to our templates, our engine, and we go back to engine, no, it should be feature packs. Nope. Templates, there we go. Duh, templates. It's the templates we're working on. So templates, and then you have the template resources folder. Under templates resource folder, you have high and standard, which you'll notice correspond to these things right here, detail levels and geometry and mannequin. and we go into high, for example, you find mannequin, and then you find a bunch of stuff for the mannequin. Things like, for example, the content folder with the animations and the character meshes. If you plan on reusing anything that exists, you would use a shared content pack. And these standard and high are basically for using the standard or the high quality when you create it. I'm not using any of these things. I'm going to delete them. I simply want a new content package that I have set up. Now, I am using the third-person character. If I was caring about storage space, I could delete all my mannequin information from that project and use simply the mannequin shared content pack. That's an example. And delete those. Detail level preferences. So when you're creating this template, what detail level does it default to? High or standard? I don't care. I'm going to leave it at high. That's all we needed. This is our template ready to go. Going back into there one last time, we have our media folder. You simply have two files. They both need to be named the same as your template. So I'm going to go back here, copy the name of my template, go back into here, and go in the correct folder, and rename these. So I have new template.png, and then I have new, come on, rename, there we go. New template underscore preview.png. This is the icon in the main menu. This is the the image that shows up when you're creating the template itself on the right. You can, of course, change this to make it appropriate, especially if you're working in a company. That's it. We're done. Now, of course, we need to restart the engine. So in this case, I'm going to relaunch the engine. If you had the engine open before, it's not going to know about the new templates until the engine restarts. Once this restarts, we can go to New Project, and we should have a new template in here. Now, it's called New Template, assuming I named it New Template. Right here. You can see blank, default Android, the one I created, and now New Template. You can see it's called New Template here, My New Template. That information matches up with what we have here. New template, my new template. If we look back at the launcher at, for example, first person, you'll notice it says things like asset type reference, class type reference, whereas ours does not have that. I'm scrolling, but nothing's happening. Again, I removed those. They were optional. I don't have them in here. You'll notice this defaults to maximum quality. So you have maximum and scalable, high, and standard. Those are going to be your differences for things that are included. Starter content, yes or no. And name it. So I'm going to name this one My Template Creation. So we know we create it with our new template. Hit Create Project. It's going to go ahead and copy over all the appropriate files. It's going to ignore all the ones we tell it to ignore. Open up your new template just like you were used to, and here we go. Because I used my saved folder, my layout is exactly how I set it up, including defaulting to this view. And everything else is set up exactly like we'd expect it. Anything we've changed, anything we've added, our folder content's the same. We go into our project settings. We go to, where'd it go? Stupid description, new blank template. We go into our maps and mode, defaulting to our default map. Everything's set up exactly how we had it. And our new project, our new template is usable.